Right, George, you were known, as we've said many times, as a big-time recruiter. How exactly did you come about that, other than the fact that you got good players? But I mean, what led to that?
I think a lot of it, Jack, was in those days you could outwork people. You could be better organized than they were. And Villanova gave me an opportunity to get around and to move around the East Coast and the South primarily and look for players. And so I really started, there was a newsstand down at 30th and Market in Philadelphia. They sold out-of-town newspapers. And so one of the ways I acquired prospects' names was I would go down and look through the papers and buy them and then get the names, and then I'd go back and get on the phone and track them down and that. And I ended up over the course of the second year, I had such a great relationship with the guy at the newsstand that he would let me look through the papers, and I didn't have to buy them unless I wanted to take the paper with me. And one of the reasons was I remember one time I went down, there was a big snowstorm, so I went in to get some coffee and a donut, and just, I don't know, I thought about him. I said, I'm going to get him a coffee and a donut, so I brought it out. After that, I had carte blanche at the newspaper stand. So I'd get the names and I'd check on them. One of the first guys I got out of the South was Johnny Jones at Pompano Beach, Blanchili, which was an all-black school. And even today, Sports Illustrated still does his faces in the crowd. Well, I saw his picture and a notification that he had scored 48 in a game, so I called down there. I knew that Blanchili was an all-black school. I called down and I asked the coach about it. He said, oh yeah, he said, but you know, he regularly scores in the high 30s in that. And so I said once again, who's recruiting him? He said, Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, Tennessee State, all traditionally black schools. And so we were able to get him to sign at Villanova because we were the only predominantly white school recruiting him. And he ended up, and I think he's still in the top 10 all-time scorers in the history of the school. And then subsequently we got Porter and one of the Pulitzer Prize writers, Sandy Grady, was writing for the Philadelphia Daily News at the time, or the Bulletin. And he wrote a column, and it was called The Underground Railroad. And the thesis of the column was that how Ravling's bringing all these black kids from the South to the North and playing on the slavery thing of the slaves escaping from in the Underground Railroad to the North. And so then I started getting a lot of publicity because all those players were obviously successful at Villanova and had great careers there, and they're still in their record books. But a lot of it had to do with the fact that segregation played a huge part in that, because I didn't have to compete against that many schools. And honestly, we were the only school in the East that was recruiting in the South in basketball.
All right, but still, you're recruiting kids from predominantly black schools to a predominantly white school.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that so attractive to them?
Well, I think, one, they saw it as a unique opportunity for them to grow educationally and socially. The other thing, it was Philadelphia. It was a city that had a great diversity of ethnic groups. There were black groups that they could identify with. There were black fraternities. There was an opportunity for them to play a national schedule. That was the other thing. You didn't have many games on TV then. Usually there was a game a week. But here they could play a national schedule. If they were to go to Florida A&M or Tennessee State or Bethune-Cookman, they weren't going to get the exposure that they could get by going to Villanova. At that time, if you didn't play in Madison Square Garden, Chicago Stadium, and the Palestra, which is where Villanova played most of their home games, you had very little chance of making All-American. So exposure was a big element. Not only exposure athletically, but exposure culturally and exposure educationally.